Hi everyone, welcome to WhyBuy. Today we're going to be cooking a brisket on a Green Mountain Grill pellet smoker. So I've had a brisket a couple times down in the States. They have excellent barbecue down there, but it always is such a big cut of meat that I was a little bit apprehensive about wanting to try it myself. I had a different type of smoker that was a little bit more maintenance and would take basically all day tending to the smoker if I wanted to do a brisket on it. So once I got this new pellet smoker, I decided that it was a little bit easier to use and that I would go for the brisket. So important things to consider when you're buying a brisket is the size. They come in a variety of sizes between 8 to 12 pounds. So you want to take that into consideration before you start cooking, how many people you're cooking for, and how much time you have for the cook. They say the general rule of thumb is about a pound of brisket per person. So a couple of things you can do before going out and buying your brisket is to obviously prep your smoker. You want to have it nice and clean so you get a good smooth cook out of it. You want to determine the type of pellets you want to have, what blend you're going to use. I'm using a signature blend here right now, which is just sort of a mix of everything, but you may have a different preference, so it's good to consider that you have enough pellets for a long cook as well. So with your smokers now clean and ready to go, there's a variety of places where you can get briskets. There's the local chain supermarkets. The one I got here today is from my local butcher, which is All Natural and Exotic Meats in North Vancouver, British Columbia. Thank you to Dennis for supplying the brisket here today. It's top notch. So when I cooked my first brisket, I did a lot of research, several websites on how to prep it and how to cook it properly, what temperature, and how long of a cook you want it. Usually the rule of thumb is about an hour and a half per pound. Brisket is the breast and the lower chest area of the cow. It's a rough cut of meat, and it usually contains a lot of fat when you get it from the butcher. So to prep your brisket, you first want to take it out of its packaging that it came in. It's good to pat it dry. From there, you're going to take off the fat aside. So there's a big fat cap on the end of the brisket, and you want to cut that down almost to the meat. So it takes a little bit of work, but you want to get rid of all that excess fat. So one thing you want when you're cutting the fat is a nice sharp knife. Make sure that you take care. You don't want to hurt yourself if you're cutting that. But don't have to throw out the fat either. There's lots of uses for the fat afterwards. For example, we use it in a dehydrator and we make some rinds afterwards. So once you've cut off all the fat, you want to get your dry rub together. Now there's a lot of different rubs you can use on a brisket. For the one I'm using today, it's just a kosher salt, black pepper, and a little bit of garlic powder. To help it stick to the meat, you usually want to use a binder. Today I've used just regular yellow mustard. You can use Dijon mustard. Some people use olive oil as well. If you're using mustard, it won't, the flavor won't linger on there. Olive oil can get into the meat a little bit more and maybe give a little bit different taste, but it does help the rub adhere to the meat and stick throughout the cooking process. Gives you a nice crust and bark on it. So when you apply your dry rub, always wear gloves, it's always helpful. But you want to make sure you get every square inch of that brisket to make sure it's fully covered. Once you're done with the rub, you can wrap it in some cling wrap, make sure get all the air out of there, and you want to throw it in your fridge for 8 hours to overnight. So if you don't have any cling wrap, aluminum foil or some butcher's paper will do the trick as well. Just needs to get into an area where it's not going to get contaminated from anything else. The worst part about doing this is the timing. So sometimes you have to get up at early o'clock to get your brisket on the smoker and get it ready for the day. You want to have it timed about perfectly so you're not having guests perhaps waiting around while the meat's still cooking up. So in the morning of the day of the cook, you usually get the brisket out of the fridge and let it just sit at room temperature for a short while. I'll fire up the smoker, make sure I got the right pellets in there and that I'm topped up. Fire up the smoker, get it through its start process and up to a temperature about 225, which is where I'm going to start the smoke. So cooking a brisket, you want to do it in 2 stages. First, you're going to do it unwrapped, just open on the smoker, and you're going to probably cook that at about 225, 250, depending on the size, for a few hours. You want to get that internal temperature up to about 160 Fahrenheit. A good way of reading that is either through a meter thermometer, which I'm using, or an instant thermometer or whatever, or even the probes through the Green Mountain Grill here. Once you get it up to 160, you're going to remove the meat from the smoker. You're going to get some butcher paper or aluminum foil. I prefer butcher paper. I find it cooks better. And you want to wrap that brisket up into that butcher paper and then place it back on the grill. Next part is you're going to put the temperature up to about 275-ish, and you're going to finish off. It'll take a couple hours, and you want to get that internal temperature of the brisket up to 200, 205. So once you get the temperature up to about 200, 205, you're going to remove the brisket from there. So one of the things I've started doing is using a cooler to allow my brisket to rest. You can use any type of cooler from a very expensive Yeti all the way down to a no-name styrofoam one. Well, the one I use is a Bodega soft-shelled cooler, and the ultimate goal is to allow the juices to redistribute throughout that meat and have minimal heat loss while it's resting. So why is it important to let your meat rest? If you were to take your brisket right off the smoker and just cut it right away, you're going to lose a lot of that moisture that's retained in there. So letting your meat rest is going to allow those juices to redistribute throughout the brisket. And when you go to cut it, you're going to have a nice, juicy brisket that's going to be full of flavor instead of having all the waste go on your countertop or your cutting board. So remember, let the brisket rest for at least an hour. So the one thing I like about cooking a brisket is, although it does take a long time to cook, it gives me time to do other things throughout my day. Not too many actually. So that was full beforehand. You can see it maybe used about, for a 10-hour cook, maybe about a third of the hopper. So a couple of things you can do while you're waiting for your brisket to rest. You may have some side fixins for the meal that you want to prepare. Perhaps you have some other stuff you need to cook. But get it ready. Of course, you can always socialize with your friends and family. You can also spritz your brisket as it's cooking with a little bit of water and perhaps an apple cider vinegar. It keeps a little bit moisture during the cook. I don't. I find the results of using the smoker are just good enough for me, and that it still turns out very juicy and flavorful. So even though you've done all the work and you're prepared, it's always good to have a backup plan. Say the power goes out, the smoker is electric, you can always finish the brisket on a conventional propane barbecue. So let's talk about overcooking. First off, we want to prevent that. It's very important to invest in a good meat thermometer, whether it's a meter plus, or if you're using your Green Mountain Grill, it comes with 2 probes and they can help you out through the app. So you've probably heard of the meat sweats, but have you heard of the term stall? So at a certain point in the cook, you're going to see that your temperature of the meat isn't rising. This is called the stall. It's not to worry. This is just the meat is just sweating at this point, and the temperature isn't going to rise up as much, but you just have to be patient, allow the smoker to do its thing, and it will get through it. So the first time I ran into this problem, I panicked a little bit. I ended up putting the temperature of the smoker up, trying to speed up the cook, thinking that I was doing something wrong. But you just gotta relax, be patient, let the smoker do its work, it'll come back, and the temperature will keep rising. So the last part is the cutting, and yes, there is a right way to do it. When you're cutting the brisket, you're going to end up with a lot of juices that are going to be flowing out. Not to worry, there's still a lot left over in the meat. But you want to think about the cutting board you're using too, so you can control the mess that's going to be made. I use a bamboo cutting board. It's got a little divot around the edge, which is a little juice collector. I actually even end up putting that inside of a tray just in case there's excess spill, so it's easier to clean up at the end of the day. You're going to have the 2 points of the brisket. You have the flat and you have the point. This is where you're going to get all of the good cuts. So I'm going to be cutting against the grain this way, sort of like this way here. So when you're cutting the flat, you want to make sure you cut against the grain. This locks in the juices when you cut it and doesn't spill them out everywhere. The point, you can cut that up into little ends at the end and have a, you know, if you want to make brisket tacos afterwards or something over the leftovers, it's really good. Delicious. Perfect. So of course you got to think about what to serve with the brisket. There's obviously a lot of variety out there. I prefer some sweet pickles, salty chips, some coleslaw, and maybe a little bit of garlic bread just to soak up some of the juice. Of course, brisket always goes down with a nice cold beer. For the price, brisket is a really nice treat, and it's all the better to share it with some friends and family. There's usually a little bit left over, so it also is good. It serves me for a couple extra meals throughout the week. The nice thing about making a brisket, it always has that wow factor. The meat is just very delicious, but it's just when you come out with the cook at the end and people see what has been done, they're always really impressed with it, and just actually the smoke flavored and the look of the meat with the smoke ring just a little bit into the meat. It just looks great, tastes great, just makes for a perfect day. So if you thought this video was helpful, like and subscribe, show your support, and thank you for watching. Hi everyone, welcome to WhyBuy. Today we're going to be making a brisket on a Green Mountain Grill pellet smoker. I had a bug in my face. But you don't have to throw out the fat either. There's actually other options you can do with it. For instance, we put it back on the dehydrator, or we make some pork rinds, or beef rinds, I guess. Not pork rinds, because it's not pork. Duh. Yeah, it gives me a chance to do other things, such as filming this video today.
A little bit of a head nod, of course. And yeah, kind of head bobbing. Yeah, no,
Yeah, so I'm not an actor, so you know, it's kind of not natural for me to do this. What's my emotion in this scene? I'm not sure.
I would say you're, it's quasi confused / elated.
Why am I calling my friends at 5:30 in the morning? Yes, very confused.
It's good. Air fryer versus smoker.
Let's see which one wins. Cooked to perfection. It tastes good. It's too hot.
Boiling hot.
Yeah, but you saw
boiling hot,
right?
Yeah, I'll take a few slices, maybe 2, 3. What are you willing to spare, Jeff?
Then we all, once we have enough footage and we get this done, we all go for a nap. Hey, when you hit my age, after you get 40, you'll start napping a lot more.
I did. He got me good.